Programming note. This video about Jeffrey Epstein contains non-graphic, non-descriptive news coverage of controversial issues. Usually, I would never do this, but I've decided to censor the following words because if I don't, YouTube will age restrict this video and drastically limit its reach. None of the details have been removed, but if you prefer to watch the video in full without annoying censorship, please check out my Patreon. Lowest tier is just $1 a month. Also, don't be thrown off by the first few minutes of this video. Looking at it now, it's a little intense, but just bear with me, okay? I'm going somewhere with it. Dear Patriots, take yourself back, way back, to the beginning of July 2019. Donald Trump was president. Energy Department white hat spy Q was leaking deep state secrets to the people in riddle form, like an undercover bridge troll. And for those like yourself who were really paying attention, it was incredibly clear that within a week, there would be a major event. The country will be fixed. The children will be saved. And not only would your extended family be speaking to you again, they'd be apologizing. Now, the nature of that major event was up for debate. The Orthodox Q-pilled folks were mostly anticipating Trump's rally on the 4th of July.
And everything was tippy-top.
The theory was their golden god would announce the arrest of several high-ranking elite Democrat pedophiles, like Barack Obama, George Soros, and of course, Bill and Hillary Clinton. The JFK Jr. line faction was fixated on the day after that, July 5th, when they expected JFK Jr. to reveal that he had, number one, faked his death in 1999, and number two, been spending a lot of time posting on 8chan lately. JFK Jr., aka Q himself, would then team up with Trump to send the very same sicko elite straight to Guantanamo Bay. Whichever camp you were in, the storm was coming, the plan was trusted, and we were all going where we one went. July 4th came. Trump gave a pretty standard rally with not even a tease of the harsh justice in store for the Democrat Party communists. And then we got another boring July 5th without even one JFK Jr. reveal. It wasn't the first big failure for the Anons, of course. You and the rest of the Q-pilled faithful had dealt with disappointment before, and you would again. It would take a lot more than that to shake your faith. But this is not another story about something QAnon got wrong. There's a million of those. This is a much rarer type of story. A time where Q got something almost right, because the very next day, that's July 6th, 2019, that was the day the FBI NYPD Crimes Against Children Task Force arrested Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Jeffrey Epstein wasn't exactly a household name at this point, but he was already well known to you and the other digital soldiers. A billionaire child trafficker with ties to global leaders, academics, famous actors, celebrity lawyers, and U.S. Democrat politicians. In other words, Trump had literally arrested the ringleader of an elite child sex trafficking operation, just like Q had almost predicted. This was it. The storm was here. The next step, you knew, would be Trump ordering the Justice Department to unseal their indictments and commence military tribunals of the entire satanic Democrat cabal. Things looked even better 2 days later when Bill Clinton himself was forced to make a statement through his assistant's Twitter account about his well-documented friendship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Questions no American citizen would ever want to answer.
They had the enemy on the run, and for once, the deep state had nowhere to hide. Or so it would seem, because somewhere the massive unseen gears of the deep state machine began to turn. The narrative began to shift, and a month later, when Epstein was found dead in his prison cell before naming a single one of his associates, it became clear that the weatherman was wrong. Hadn't been a storm at all, barely a light drizzle. Now today, the QAnon movement has all but disappeared from view. Disavowed by politicians, discredited on Wikipedia, disinvited from Thanksgiving. But I think enough time has passed that we can take a closer look at a core element of the grand plot Q described that they were maybe a little bit right about. Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein. How close were they exactly? Were they buddies? We're going to go through their entire relationship and count up every time we know of that they hung out or associated with each other. Call it the Epstein-Clinton buddy count. But don't get the wrong idea. This is not some red pill for the weak-minded. This is not one of Roger Stone's dirty tricks or a psyop to discredit Hillary. This is not the Illuminati or Pizzagate or Q. We are not baking our own reality from a trail of breadcrumbs. This is not some fake, made-up, dubious conspiracy theory about elite pedophiles conspiring to infiltrate the Democratic Party. This is the real thing.
Mac, you thin-elbowed little goblin.
Hey gang, I would love this video to be accessible to everyone, no matter where they sit on the political spectrum. I think I've got the conservatives and the leftists pretty well locked down, but if you're a liberal or, a Clinton superfan, if you're still with her, I just want to say, don't worry. I'm not a Pizzagate guy or a QAnon guy, despite my suspiciously thorough knowledge of their lore or, everything about my whole appearance. I get it, I know I don't look trustworthy. I look like if Ed Sheeran owned multiple dab rigs. But try to hear me out on this. I did my absolute best here to keep this all grounded in reality, using the most credible evidence available. Unsurprisingly, many of the sources I came across while researching the Clinton and Epstein relationship were right-wing or obviously biased. Doesn't mean they aren't still worthy of our attention. So wherever I think it's appropriate, I'll be making a note of political biases and always trying to corroborate my claims with evidence from multiple sources. I've also tested every claim in this video by running it all past my non-pilled normal girlfriend.
James, please. Yep. Take it down, couple notches.
As usual with my conspiracy videos, I'm going to try to present all my evidence as neutrally as possible. As the video plays, I encourage you to form your own opinion about what you think the evidence means. And then at the end of the video, I'll tell you my opinion, which you will adopt as your own. That's the deal. That's the way it goes. And by the way, you absolutely do not have to watch my other video about Donald Trump and Epstein to understand this one, but if you do specifically only watch one of them, you should really think about what that says about you as a person. For one thing, it means you're a scumbag who isn't helping the Chill Goblin channel grow. Come on, watch the Trump one too. Be better. Subscribe to my Patreon too. The top tier. I need the money. It's very frustrating that since Epstein's arrest, Clinton has said so little about the time they spent together. One of the most substantial statements was when his deputy chief of staff, Angel Urena, posted this Notes app screenshot on Twitter. Now, let's go over Urena's tweet in full because I'm kind of going to frame the whole video around this thing. President Clinton knows nothing about the terrible crimes Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to in Florida some years ago, or those with which he's been recently charged in New York. It's pretty surprising Clinton knows nothing about Epstein's crimes. Sounds like Angel's organizing a surprise party or something. Please do not mention anything about Epstein's terrible crimes to Bill, okay? We're trying to keep it a secret until his birthday. That's how I think he talks. In 2002 and 2003, President Clinton took a total of 4 trips on Jeffrey Epstein's airplane, 1 to Europe, 1 to Asia, and 2 to Africa, which included stops in connection with the work of the Clinton Foundation. Staff, supporters of the foundation, and his Secret Service detail traveled on every leg of every trip. He had 1 meeting with Epstein in his Harlem office in 2002, and around the same time made 1 brief visit to Epstein's New York apartment with a staff member and his security detail. He's not spoken to Epstein in well over a decade, and has never been to Little St. James Island, Epstein's ranch in New Mexico, or his residence in Florida. Great, so this gives us a spot to start from. Let's keep all these claims in mind as we sift through every known connection between the two of them.
Well, we all know that, Bill Clinton is somebody to be believed. Whenever he says something as fact, as absolute, you should just say, okay.
Okay, Bill. Thank you for telling me the truth. But first, some of you guys might know nothing about the terrible crimes Jeffrey Epstein was accused of. If you're Bill Clinton, for example. Well, don't worry. I'm going to give you a quick Epstein refresher course on everything you need to know for this video. Jeffrey Epstein was an intensely private and mysterious person, consciously building a reputation for having no reputation at all. We know in the 70s and 80s, he worked at Bear Stearns and at Towers Financial, the company that orchestrated what was at the time the largest Ponzi scheme in history. In the late 80s, he set out on his own and became known among a certain set of the hyper-elite as a skilled money manager, a genius of tax law, a reverse Robin Hood who fought to help the wealthiest 0.00002% of Americans keep all their money. Then, in the early 2000s, for reasons we'll get to, Epstein's mysterious lifestyle began to generate headlines. In 2002, New York Magazine's profile titled Jeffrey Epstein, International Money Man of Mystery, described his career like this. The premise behind Epstein's core business was simple. Epstein would manage the individual and family fortunes of clients worth $1 billion or more. In 2003, Vicky Ward wrote Vanity Fair's The Talented Mr. Epstein, offering this explanation of his wealth. According to him, the flat fees he receives from his clients combined with his skill at playing the currency markets with very large sums of money have afforded him the lifestyle he enjoys today. But was Jeffrey Epstein really just a money manager for the very rich? From what we know now, that's probably complete bullshit. During this period of his life, when Epstein wasn't traveling the world in his private jet, hanging out with celebrities, academics, and celebrity academics, he spent a staggering amount of his time sexually abusing underage girls. We know from several sources that he received erotic massages from these girls on an average of 3 times a day, every day, meaning the number of girls he abused is probably in the thousands. Epstein couldn't have done any of this without his accomplice and legal-aged beard, Ms. Maxwell. Of all the secrets Epstein took to his grave, perhaps none's more mysterious than how do you pronounce her first name?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine was his
Socialite Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine, don't be a bitch.
Ghislaine, down.
What is that
What
name?
was it called?
Ghislaine.
Ghislaine.
The SS
I think
rape.
I think you say Ghislaine.
Yes.
Ghislaine is rich.
Ghislaine Maxwell trial.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
It's almost like there's 2 different Ghislaines.
Ghislaine's in prison.
Yes, stop calling her Ghislaine.
This Ghislaine Maxwell guy or lady.
She made sure that I knew her name and how to pronounce it correctly.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Unlike Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell came from wealth and knew how to behave in the world of high society. She introduced Epstein to a whole new network of elites. She also used her considerable charm to recruit girls for him, prowling around Palm Beach or New York just after school let out, looking for attractive, young teens she could convince to give her boyfriend a massage for a few $100. Ghislaine also allegedly participated in the abuse herself. Maxwell's other passion was to protect the most vulnerable and ignored things on Earth, victims of child sex trafficking. No, sorry, I remember that wrong. It was the oceans. The oceans. She wanted to save the oceans. Here she is giving a TED Talk about it.
I'm passionate about the ocean.
Jeffrey and Ghislaine were constantly using his private jet, which was nicknamed the Lolita Express, to visit his various properties, a few of which were mentioned in Angel Ureña's Facebook post. A mansion in New York, a home in Palm Beach, a massive ranch in New Mexico where Epstein had planned to house a bunch of models for him to, this is completely real, impregnate and seed the human race with his DNA. Yeah, it's a whole rabbit hole I don't have time to get into. Then, of course, the most famous Epstein property, his Caribbean island. Just a word about the island. Little St. James, off the coast of St. Thomas, has a bunch of weird shit on it, like a big creepy sundial and a blue-striped temple-looking structure. It is by far the most flashy and attention-catching of all Epstein's properties, and the fact that it's out in the middle of the ocean with no police, no witnesses, and no way to escape does make it uniquely terrifying. At the same time, way too much focus is put on LSJ, and the island can be kind of a litmus test for people with a shallow understanding of the Epstein case. The way some people talk about it, you'd think this is the only place where abuse happened, which is far from true. And this is a false assumption which runs the risk of under-investigating those who visited Epstein's other properties. And as far as I can tell, stories about underground tunnels or a satanic temple that locks from the outside are complete fan fiction. 2005, Palm Beach police began investigating Epstein after a local woman found $300 in her stepdaughter's purse. What started as a simple case soon broadened into a massive one, exposing a horrifying pyramid scheme of child abuse where Epstein and Maxwell would pay mostly poor girls from the local high schools a few $100 either for a massage or to recruit their friends. The trial that followed was a complete joke. Despite being caught basically dead to rights as one of the most dangerous pedophiles in history, Epstein escaped the full weight of his crimes with a comically light prison sentence. Also, and this is going to sound like a joke, but it's completely true. You know how sometimes criminals can escape full prosecution by informing on their friends? Well, this is the only case I know of where the opposite happened. Epstein signed a non-prosecution agreement promising the authorities he would not reveal the identities of anyone else involved in the abuse. Ghislaine retreated from Epstein's life soon afterward, as did many of his other powerful friends. Still, even after this point, he was able to have friendships with powerful people like Bill Gates, Alan Dershowitz, Steve Bannon, and Prince Andrew, as well as many academic and financial connections. Then, as we've been over, Epstein was again arrested on July 6, 2019. He died in prison about a month later, the autopsy concluding he'd strangled himself by tying a sheet from his bed to his neck and, I guess, kneeling down really hard. The other possibility, I think, was oversaturation in the cerebral cortex. He died from knowing too much. Come on now. Oh, we like to have fun around here. We love a good laugh. We love to laugh. Okay, I think that about covers it. Let's talk Bill Clinton. Okay, so the first chapter in this saga I'm calling the courtship phase. Based on what you know about Clinton and Epstein, when do you think their story starts? I always assumed that they met one another in the early 2000s while they were flying around in Epstein's jet with celebrities. Angel Urenia's statement implies they hung out just a handful of times between 2002 and 2003. But researching this video, I was surprised to find out they go back way further, almost to the start of Clinton's time as president in the early 90s. Jeffrey Epstein was a master of manipulation, someone who often saw humans as stepping stones, tools, to connect them to people higher up in the food chain. As you'll soon see, the close relationship he had with Bill Clinton was something he had been consciously working toward for many years. He called it, like a pool shot, Bill Clinton corner pocket of friendship. You just got hustled into being my pal. So let's take a trip back in time. Are you sick of the Trump era? Are you sick of a Republican president who's a notorious pervert, an obvious liar, a white supremacist who every day seems to bring us a new embarrassing scandal only to easily escape all consequences through the power of his charisma? Well, what do you say we flash back to a time when all of those things were still true, but the guy was a Democrat? In January of 1993, President William Jefferson Clinton was inaugurated. He came into office already surrounded by controversy with various women. Paula Jones had accused him of sexual harassment. Nightclub singer Jennifer Flowers claimed she was in a 12-year-long romantic relationship with him, which he denied at the time but would later admit to. Perhaps sensing that Clinton was a kindred spirit, Epstein got to work becoming his friend right away. Just 1 month after Clinton took office, Jeffrey Epstein was marked on the White House visitors log where he apparently went to the West Wing. Check this out. Did you know this? According to the British newspaper, the Daily Mail, Epstein visited the White House 17 times from 1993 to 1995, the vast majority of which state he was heading to the West Wing. Now, I would love to show you the actual logs. That would be a great visual for such a massive claim. Unfortunately, the Daily Mail never released the logs themselves. The Mail isn't my idea of an unbiased neutral source, though they're far from the sketchiest or the most right-wing source I consulted for this video, so look forward to that. To feel good about including these claims, I've looked to corroborate them with additional sources where I can, and at the very least, I've checked every date for Epstein's White House visits against the flight logs of the Lolita Express, which are some of the most valuable documentary evidence we have concerning this entire case. Turns out, almost all the dates given by the Mail match up to dates Epstein flew in and out of Washington, D.C., or somewhere nearby. Some of the flight logs list people flying with Epstein who then signed in with Epstein on the Daily Mail's White House logs, and sometimes people working at the White House are even logged flying back with Epstein after his visit. So to me, the Daily Mail's claims about Epstein's visits to the White House, they passed the smell test. Still skeptical? Well, let me jump straight to the second time he visited, which is definitely the one with the most proof. So, in September 1993, Jeffrey Epstein donated $10,000 to the White House Historical Association, and he and Ghislaine were able to attend a gala for the Clintons' most generous donors on September 28th, hosted by Bill and Hillary themselves. Now here, we can see their names on the guest list from the Clinton Presidential Library. And here are some photos of Epstein and Maxwell getting the trademark Clinton VIP treatment. A natural politician, Clinton had this uncanny ability to shake your hand, look right in your eyes, and make you feel like you were the only person in the world that Bill would trust to purchase children from. The paper trail for this event continues with an official thank you note to Epstein from Bernard Meyer, the VP of the White House Historical Foundation. Now, some people were unsatisfied by the things I called receipts in my last Epstein video, but I think you'll find this one literally is a receipt. And notice, it was also sent to Arnold Paul Prosperi, who was managing Clinton's fundraising at the time. Prosperi was an FOB. Have you ever heard that term before?
Fresh off the boat?
No, not that.
That's all I know.
Sorry, I didn't even think about that. At FOB, no, this is a Clinton-era term that stands for Friend of Bill's, referring to all the weird, sketchy Arkansas guys Clinton brought with him to staff the White House.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think it's really funny if men went around and said, "Are you a friend of Bill's?" No, like just how like people were like a friend of Dorothy's.
Yeah, to like sneakily ask if someone is a member of the satanic pedophile cabal.
Yeah.
You a friend of Bill's? No, what? Never mind. Sorry, don't mind me. Must be at the wrong altar. 3 quick facts about Prosperi. Number 1, he went way back with Clinton. He actually ran his campaign for student body president at Georgetown University. He was convicted of fraud in 1997, swindling a client out of millions of dollars. Just before Clinton left office, he gave Prosperi a pardon. Finally, years later, during the 13 months Epstein would spend in Palm Beach County Jail, Prosperi would visit him at least 20 times. Seems like a lot. Dude basically spent more time in Epstein's jail cell than Epstein did. What's up with that? Now, back in the 90s, Epstein's next visit to the White House was December 17th, 1993. And according to the Daily Mail, the logs apparently show that he was accompanied by a mysterious woman named Jennifer Garrison. Looking at the Lolita Express flight logs for this date, we can see Epstein and a Jennifer Garrison flew from Palm Beach to Washington on December 20th, which is annoying because it makes no sense. I'm guessing the entry was just made in the wrong row. December 17th is the entry just above it. Either that, or we've just discovered Epstein's greatest secret. He was a time traveler. The absolute worst possible superpower to fall into the hands of a pedophile. If we're generous and include Ghislaine Maxwell, Jennifer Garrison was the second of 8 young women Epstein would bring with him on his visits to the Clinton White House. The third was Shelley Gaffney, a 22-year-old Israeli model. The Daily Mail article reported that she denied any connection, but it later turned out that she'd just kind of forgotten about it. She later told Ynet News, "I did not realize it was Jeffrey Epstein until the Daily Mail's reporter called me. At first, I did not understand what he was talking about and how I was related to it at all. I visited Washington with my then partner. We traveled with a nice Jewish guy who was very enthusiastic about me being a successful Israeli model and took us on his plane for a tour of Washington, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and the White House." Oh, it really sucks that Epstein was dead when all this came out, because I know that it would have destroyed him to find out that this girl he took on a date to the White House had completely forgotten who he was. Now, next was on May 13th when Epstein and Jennifer Garrison's names were written on the White House visitor logs as well as the logs of the Lolita Express, flying from New York to Reagan Airport, 5 miles from Washington, D.C. More on this visit in a second. On July 28th, 1994, Epstein brought his 5th woman to the White House, a 21-year-old Norwegian heiress named Chelina Middelfart, who Epstein would date immediately before she became Donald Trump's girlfriend. There's more on Chelina in my Trump video. I get the feeling Epstein was really into her. The 6th and 7th women both accompanied him on the same day, September 26th, 1994. Now, the first was Frances Jardine, a model in her 20s, and the other was Epstein's girlfriend, the 33-year-old physician and former Miss Sweden, Eva Anderson. After breaking up with Epstein, Eva remained very close to him. Epstein introduced her to her future husband, hedge fund billionaire Glenn Dubin, who would later be accused of sexual assault by Virginia Giuffre. Glenn and Ava's child would become Epstein's goddaughter. This daughter has been said to be Epstein's favorite person in the world, and her name is Chelina. I've thought a lot about what it might mean for a pedophile to name his ex-girlfriend's child after his other ex-girlfriend, and I've come to the conclusion that I don't want to think about it anymore. Now, the 8th and final White House woman was 22-year-old Lyubov Orlova, marked down in Lolita Express flight logs as Luba. I couldn't find much info on her, but the Daily Mail reports that according to public records, she once lived in a Manhattan apartment belonging to Epstein, which was listed in his address book as apartment for models. More evidence of these visits can be found in a video of Epstein's Palm Beach home taken during an FBI raid. He had decorated the massage room off his master bedroom with at least 2 photos of himself and a young woman posing for a photo in the White House briefing room. I won't dwell on this, but these photos were on display in one of Epstein and Ghislaine's prime locations for conducting abuse. So what's with the girls? Well, apparently one of Epstein's keys to success in business was to bring along a beautiful woman or two when meeting with powerful men. According to a Russian model friend of his, Kira Diktar, Epstein used to pay her $1,000 just to show up to his meetings looking good.
Men are crazy sometimes. They're like little kids. And when they see beautiful women, they forget about money, they forget about anything. They just want to be around. They want to be around Jeffrey's world.
I'm guessing that was probably Epstein's strategy here too. He figured that leading a constant parade of models through the West Wing would help him, give him an advantage in negotiating with the men on Clinton's staff, and maybe even catch the eye of Clinton himself. It was probably a good strategy. To put it lightly, Clinton could at times be indiscreet around women, even at the White House. 1993 was the year White House volunteer Kathleen Wiley claims Clinton grabbed and kissed her in his private study. In 1995, Clinton began his famous affair with Monica Lewinsky, moving from intense flirting, in Lewinsky's words, to their first sexual encounter in Clinton's private study. Wow, so much for all that money Epstein gave him to keep the Oval Office clean. Lewinsky claimed they had 8 sexual encounters while she worked at the White House and 2 after she left. And everything I just mentioned occurred while Clinton was being sued for sexual harassment. The guy doesn't have a lot of self-control. But who was Epstein meeting with? Well, for the majority of these visits, Epstein and his guests were apparently signed into the White House either by Mark Middleton or Karen Ewing, who told the Daily Mail she'd sign him in on Mark Middleton's behalf. Okay, Karen, yeah, that's what I would have said too. Mark Middleton was another FOB Clinton had brought with him to the White House all the way from Little Rock, Arkansas. In 1994, his title was Deputy to the Counselor. According to a source reported in the Daily Beast, Middleton and Epstein had at least 3 official meetings in the White House. Epstein's Black Book contained 17 ways of getting in contact with Middleton, which is a lot. We're talking Trump numbers here. Now, with that many contact numbers, it shouldn't be surprising that Middleton also shows up on the Lolita Express flight logs. May 13th, 1994 was the day Epstein apparently visited the White House twice in one day, at 12 p.m. and 4 p.m., accompanied by Jennifer Driver. First time he gets signed in by Mark Middleton, second time by Karen Ewing. So look at this shit. The day of those visits, May 13th, Epstein's flight manifest shows 2 flights. The first, Epstein and Jennifer Driver fly from New York to D.C. The second, they're joined by Mark and fly from D.C. to Palm Beach. Mark who? Well, the next couple of days, Mark Middleton, full name listed now, does a bunch more flying with Epstein. On the 14th, they fly to Bermuda and back. On the 15th, Mark Middleton hitches a ride with Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump from Palm Beach to D.C., dropping him off at work on their way to New York. I know Trump fans don't really care at all about all the time he spent with Epstein, but come on, what do you guys think about this plane ride Trump took with one of Bill Clinton's pals? That's way worse, right? So Mark Middleton left the White House in February 1995 and moved back to Arkansas, and at the same time, Epstein completely stopped appearing on the White House visitor logs. Even after leaving, Mark continued to try and leverage his connection to Bill Clinton for business purposes, maintaining a phone line in the White House for months after he left and continuing to use his White House business cards. In 1996, Clinton's administration accused him of abusing his access to the White House to impress business prospects and officially revoked that access from him. To me, seems like Epstein and Mark were kind of the perfect match. Epstein used Middleton to get his foot in the door, and Middleton used Epstein to network, raise money, further his career, and fly to Bermuda for an afternoon. So the really interesting question is, did Epstein meet with Clinton at any of these visits, other than the gala that they're photographed at together? Did they speak privately? What did they talk about? Well, we don't know and we never will. It would be totally irresponsible for me to speculate on it. But if I were to speculate, I'd say that I'm nearly certain that on at least one of Epstein's visits, he must have met with Clinton, right? Just knowing Clinton's whole affable, outgoing personality, the fact that he'd already spoken to Epstein in 1993, and of course, the many young women Epstein brought with him combined with Clinton's legendary wandering eye. But again, it would be wrong to just guess about these things, and I would never do that. Now, this is barely relevant and a total rumor, but I thought it was funny. In a C-SPAN interview in February 1995 for President's Day, Clinton was posed the question, what would he ask his personal hero John F. Kennedy if he could talk to him today? Clinton gave kind of a rambling answer that isn't interesting and doesn't matter. But years later, in 2018, the Slate podcast Slow Burn interviewed Clinton's conservative consigliere Dick Morris, and he brought up this interview.
Once on President's Day in 95, he came into the meeting with me and he said, I just met with the reporters and they asked me on President's Day, what would you like to ask your idol, John Kennedy, if you could ask him one question? And then he told me, we were alone, I wanted to ask, how did you do it? Was there like a closet or a staircase I don't know about? How did you get away with it? And he said, but I couldn't say that. So I said, what's it like to be president at a time when people are not alienated from their government?
I've rigorously fact-checked this claim against what my heart believes to be true, and I can confirm that, yeah, sounds like something Bill Clinton probably said. Anyway, so far as we know, Epstein completely stopped coming to the White House at this point, but outside the White House, we do have some other confirmed meetings. In March 1995, Clinton and Epstein both attended a political fundraiser for Bill Clinton's re-election campaign hosted by Ron Perelman in Palm Beach. Important for me to mention, this is not Ron Perlman the actor, this is Ron Perelman, billionaire, corporate raider, green mailer, and guy who will fire you if your wife gets Alzheimer's. Yeah. Not Ron Perlman, but still kind of a boy from hell. The guest list of this party includes only 14 people, including Epstein, Clinton, and Clinton's fundraising guy, AP Prosperi. The location was very close to Epstein's infamous Palm Beach mansion where he abused hundreds of young girls. Okay, so this next part I've been kind of dreading because looking into it can lead you down some extremely unpleasant internet rabbit holes, like more so than most things in this video, but it still deserves mention. So in April of 1995, Clinton received a letter from Lynn Forrester, who would later be known as Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. I'll be calling her FDR because it's shorter, and also I think she'd really hate that association. The Clintons' deep ties to FDR and her many connections to Jeffrey Epstein deserve our attention, but like anything involving the wealthy and powerful Rothschild family, we run the risk of falling into ancient anti-Semitic canards and more contemporary theories about shape-shifting reptilians. The Rothschilds definitely don't have quite the same level of wealth and influence as they did in the 19th century, but they still control a very large private fortune, and like all rich families, I think it's okay to regard them with suspicion. Let's just remember that whenever Rothschilds do bad things and hurt the world, it's most likely because they're just mega rich people acting in their own interests, not because they're evil magic lizards. And anyway, if you're really stuck in the Rothschild thing, Lynn wasn't even born a Rothschild, which historically makes her unusual as one of their wives. I, for one, think we should be applauding less cousin-marrying behavior from the ultra-rich. If they don't want to redistribute their wealth, they can at least redistribute some of their DNA. Some quick facts about FDR. She's a huge fan of the Clintons. She's contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars to Bill and Hillary's presidential campaigns over the years. In 1998, Henry Kissinger introduced her to Sir Evelyn de Rothschild, which, fun fact, can be a boy's name. I guess. Sir Evelyn was the personal financial advisor to Queen Elizabeth. He and Lynn married in 2000 and spent part of their honeymoon in the White House, which is a cool perk you get for donating lots of money to a corrupt president. Reading about Lynn's life kind of made my head spin a little bit. Like, it's so hard to imagine being that rich and connected, spending all your time in the upper stratosphere of wealth and privilege, socializing on either side of the Atlantic with high society war criminals.
Hello, I've killed millions, and I've killed millions myself.
When Hillary Clinton's emails were leaked, some noted the peculiar way she spoke to FDR. Clinton's not known to be fawning or overly apologetic, but in one email to FDR, she addresses what seems like a pretty minor social inconvenience by asking Lynn, "Let me know what penance I owe you." That's an intense way to talk to one of your friends. My favorite FDR moment happened in 2008 when she was a major donor to Hillary's campaign, but then supported John McCain over Obama. When asked why she made the switch, she said, "This is a hard decision for me personally because, frankly, I don't like him. I feel like he is an elitist. I feel like he has not given me reason to trust him." Obama is an elitist? Ma'am, you are a Rothschild. You are literally a Rothschild, ma'am.
To some people, invariably, it's going to sound like you're bitter. Hillary Clinton didn't get the nomination. This is your way of getting even.
You know what, Campbell? The people out, who are the rednecks or whoever are bitter.
Anyway, this letter's from way back in 1995 when Lynn Forrester hadn't even married into the Rothschild family and was but a humble, rich, and well-connected telecom multimillionaire and major Clinton donor. She was serving on Clinton's National Infrastructure Advisory Council, and she had recently sold her stake in TPI to Motorola for $100 million. Here's what her letter said. William T. Clinton. Right off the bat, FDR gives Clinton the wrong middle initial. Power move, Lynn. She knows he'd legally change his name before correcting her. Then she writes, "Dear Mr. President, it was a pleasure to see you recently at Senator Kennedy's house. There was too much to discuss and too little time. I used my 15 seconds of access to discuss Jeffrey Epstein and currency stabilization. So, this woman, who clearly has a ton of sway with the Clinton administration, has been talking to Clinton about Jeffrey Epstein and currency stabilization. What did she have to do with Epstein? As it turns out, a lot. According to flight logs, she rode the Lolita Express 5 times in 1997 and 1998. She sold Jeffrey Epstein a Manhattan townhouse for $9 million below market value in 2000. Her brother Ken Forrester owned an aviation company called, get this, Million Air, which operated a private airport terminal at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. Epstein flew his private jets into Teterboro 730 times, making it one of the most central points in his international child sex trafficking operation. Also, the undisputed reigning worst human alive, Alan Dershowitz, also claims to have been introduced to Epstein through Lynn Forrester, so Clinton wasn't even the only person she helped Epstein link up with. Epstein himself claims that FDR was struggling with money in the 1990s and he lent her some, which her spokesperson says is 100% false. Okay, so I feel like I'm just opening up all these questions without providing any answers, and this Lynn Forrester section is already way too long, but there's only so much that we actually know about FDR and Epstein, and the rest is speculation. So I'll quickly give you my personal guess on what was happening here, and we'll move on. Remember how I mentioned Epstein was known among the most elite of the elites for his supposed money management skills? I wonder if he was using this reputation to pitch himself to Lynn as a potential White House economic consultant. It's like he pitched her on some zany, Epstein-style money plan that would benefit people like her, and she was like, Epstein, that's crazy. So crazy, it just might work. All right, next 15 seconds I get with the man, I'm gonna bring you up, you old bastard. She's a pirate. Epstein, you old bastard. That's my Lynn Forrester impression. We like to have fun around here. Now, this is, unfortunately, just the way power works in America. It's actually kind of funny how out in the open the corporate elite's influence on government is. You give the president enough money during the campaign, and then you basically get to tell him what to do. The government is a little more than the shadow cast across the nation by big business. Shout out to John Dewey. For a more annoying example of this, check out Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Okay, moving on. Maria Farmer was the first victim of Epstein's abuse to go to authorities. She worked as a concierge in Epstein's Manhattan home from 1994 to 1995 and claims there were 3 occasions during that period where Bill Clinton was supposed to visit.
I understand that when Bill Clinton was coming, this is the craziest. When Bill Clinton would come, Ghislaine would get in a tizzy. She's like, the president's coming, the president's coming. And this happened when I was there 3 times in 1 year at that house, that Bill freaking Clinton came. And we all had to leave, except 2 Filipino maids and Chef Andy. And that's it. And everyone else had to clear out. And I mean, clear out. And I would be the last to go. And Ghislaine would say, oh, I've got to get lots of girls today. The president's coming.
To get lots of girls today. The president's coming.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. According to his statement, he did visit Epstein's New York home once in 2002, but this was long after Farmer was there. If Clinton was visiting Epstein in New York in the 90s while he was president, that would be a big deal. Now, to be fair, even in Farmer's telling, she never personally witnessed Clinton in Epstein's New York mansion, so it's possible she's telling the truth, but Clinton just didn't show up any of these times. However, there's another bit of evidence that I think makes this account more credible. Maria mentions Epstein's 2 Filipino maids. Now, Epstein did have a Filipina maid named Lynn Fontanilla, whose husband, Jojo Fontanilla, was Epstein's housekeeper. I'm not a Filipino maid, I'm a Filipino housekeeper. It's totally different. I can just imagine him shouting at his phone as he listened to that podcast. Lynn Fontanilla worked for Epstein starting in the 90s and passed away in 2016. At some point during that time, she started a Facebook account. And the photos she uploaded to that Facebook account became an unhealthy obsession of mine for about a week. Looking at her Facebook, there's a crazy album full of photos of her and her husband with all these A-list celebrities, actors, royals, politicians. And the timing is tough to figure out because they could be from any point she worked for Epstein, because they are photos she took of framed photographs. The corniness of evil. Now check this one out. Clinton's got his arms around both Fontanillas. Where was this photo taken? Luckily, there's a decent amount of background details that someone with an unhealthy obsession could really go beast mode on. Hi, I'm that person. So I looked over all of I knew that they worked at Epstein's place in New York, right? So I looked over all of these photos of his mansion, and I finally found this one from his staircase room. I don't know what a staircase room is. I guess that's just like a mansion.
Oh, James, you're too poor.
Yeah, I guess. But so you can see, if we look at between these two pictures, we got, like, first of all, the floor pattern you can see in the background here on the left there. Right. Then we've got the fireplace here, and you can see, like, the side of this fireplace.
And that lamp is in that. Oh.
Yeah. The lamp is in the same thing, but the fireplace here is right there, right? That's like the side of it, that sort of slanted fireplace. You can even see this frame here of the painting above that. Wow. The person holding the camera would have been like in the door frame here, and see these like molding on this side of the door frame, that like those little rectangles. You can sort of see them in the dimness of the this photo here.
Bill,
you can sort of see the table.
We
there.
got you dead to rights.
One kind of creepy thing is, aside from that fucking weird ass painting, one creepy thing is
very ugly. It looks like Gordon Ramsay.
But another creepy thing is this blacked out part that's censored on the thing. Epstein had a bunch of like basically child porn all up around his house. And when the FBI took these photos, they blacked out all of the naked photos of underage girls. So it's possible that there was that photo was like
right there
on this. Assuming that they never get redecorated, which doesn't seem like they really did from everything else in the photo.
Bill, you're too disgusting. You're disgusting and you're nasty.
But anyway, yeah. So there's Bill Clinton in that room.
That's pretty wild, right? So I'm reasonably sure this is a photo of Clinton in Epstein's New York apartment. The question is, was this from the visit that Urania disclosed in 2002, or from while Maria was working there in the 90s? Believe me, I've tried my best to narrow down the time frame of this photo. I looked into Clinton's ties, tried to figure out how gray his hair looks, but I haven't really come to any solid conclusions there. The honest problem is that, at least to my eyes, Clinton looked pretty much the same the whole time he was in office, and then aged real fast starting in about 2020. So this could just be the 2002 meeting from the statement, but if we believe Maria Farmer's statement, it's at least possible that this photo was taken between 94 and 95.
That took up too much of my time. Moving on then to January 1997, Clinton gets another shot at being president. On March 29th, 1997, he ends his affair with Monica Lewinsky. Alan Dershowitz claimed that sometime in the late 90s, he and Bill Clinton were at a party at Caroline Kennedy's place in Martha's Vineyard when the phone rang. A Secret Service agent came over to Bill Clinton and gave him the phone and said, "Someone wants to talk to you." Clinton went off for 5, maybe 10 minutes, had a conversation, then he came back and said, "Hi, Alan, somebody wants to talk to you." He gave me his phone, and it was Jeffrey Epstein. I said, "What are you doing on the phone?" He said, "Oh, I'm talking to Bill." That was it. Of course, there's no question he had a friendship with Bill Clinton. Okay, let's see. Party at Martha's Vineyard, name-dropping the Kennedys and Bill Clinton, and bragging about how close he was to Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, the only way I could see this story being more Dershowitz is if it involved calling Norman Finkelstein an anti-Semite. I went over this in my Trump Epstein video, but there's this British famous person apparently named Lady Victoria who claims she attended a dinner in 2000 with Epstein, Trump, Prince Andrew, and President Bill Clinton.
You had an extraordinary dinner, I think, in London, didn't you, where Donald Trump was there, and Epstein, and Prince Andrew, and Bill Clinton. That dinner party. And they were that dinner party. Yeah. So how many people were there?
Not many. I would say probably about 14 people, 14 maybe.
People. And that includes President Bill Clinton, President now Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and Prince Andrew. I mean, that's an extraordinary dinner party for a young model like you to have attended. What was it like, that dinner?
It was, I mean, I remember it.
What were you there for, do you think? What was your purpose of being there as a guest?
I guess I was there to look pretty, you know.
How did they all interact with Epstein? How did Trump, Clinton, and Prince Andrew interact with him?
Everyone was very, very pally with him, you know. He was a very well-liked guy. Like, you could see that, you know, the sort of the chemistry between him and all these other powerful people. Like, it was like there was close bonds. You could see that.
Our next story is from Virginia Giuffre and would have happened around this time, though exactly when is hard to place. In 1999, when Giuffre was 16, she was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell, entering Jeffrey Epstein's sex slave network, where she was trafficked to many powerful men until her escape in 2001. Since then, she's become one of the most admirable people I can think of, despite how terrifying it must have been to go against so many seemingly untouchable elites. She's been outspoken and public about the abuse she suffered. She's named names and provided photo evidence. She's taken people to court.
She's done a ton of interviews, and she got Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell to give her undisclosed amounts of settlement money. Just a hugely brave person who overcame so much in her life and managed to stand up for herself despite overwhelming odds. Virginia's also stated that she once saw Clinton on Epstein's island, Little St. James. This is interesting to me, a claim from someone I consider very reliable, which directly contradicts Clinton's statement that he had never been to the island. And pay attention here because, spoiler alert, this specific story will have a big part to play later in the video. All right, Virginia's recounting of seeing Clinton on LSJ was first reported in 2011 in a Daily Mail article by Sharon Churcher. On one occasion, she adds, Epstein did invite two young brunettes to a dinner which he gave on his Caribbean island for Mr. Clinton shortly after he left office. But as far as she knows, the ex-president did not take the bait. I'd have been about 17 at the time, she says. I flew to the Caribbean with Jeffrey, and then Ghislaine Maxwell went to pick up Bill in a huge black helicopter that Jeffrey had bought her. We all dined together that night. Jeffrey was at the head of the table, Bill was at his left, I sat across from him. Ghislaine was at Bill's left, and at the left of Ghislaine, there were two olive-skinned brunettes who'd flown in with us from New York. I'd never met them before. I'd say they were no older than 17, very innocent looking. They weren't there for me. They weren't there for Jeffrey or Ghislaine because I was there to have sex with Jeffrey on the trip. Maybe Jeffrey thought they would entertain Bill, but I saw no evidence that he was interested in them. He and Jeffrey and Ghislaine seems to have a very good relationship. Bill was very funny. He made me laugh a few times. And he and Jeffrey and Ghislaine told blokey jokes and the brunettes listened politely and giggled. After dinner, I gave Jeffrey an erotic massage. I don't remember seeing Bill again on the trip, but I assume Ghislaine flew him back. Ugh, gross. Finally, we arrive in 2002. For a lot of people, the Epstein-Clinton story starts here. Hopefully by now I've convinced you that it started way earlier than that, but 2002 is definitely the year the bromance got a hard launch. The bromance. Starting with February 9th, 2002, where we finally get to what a lot of you have probably been waiting for this whole video, Bill Clinton's first appearance on the Lolita Express flight manifests. Now, this flight included Clinton, Epstein, Maxwell, and 4 Secret Service members. It was flying from Miami to New York. Taking a quick look at the Angel Ureña statement, we can see that a domestic flight from Miami to New York is unaccounted for. Oof, off to a bad start. I've got another piece of evidence for this flight. Juan Alessi, an employee at Epstein's house in Palm Beach, gave a deposition in 2009. He says he met Clinton once on Epstein's plane in Miami around the time he left Epstein's employment, which was in 2002. I met President Clinton on Mr. Epstein's plane in the last month or just before I left. I met President Clinton in Miami at his plane. We drove him to Miami. Okay, so I had to read this over about 1,000,000 times, and I decided the most likely explanation is that he means he drove Epstein from Epstein's house in Palm Beach to the Miami airport. And when he got there, he met President Clinton at Epstein's plane. Of all the flights we know about, this story only fits the one from Miami to New York. Next, we've got March 19th, 2002, another Clinton appearance on a flight log. Epstein, Maxwell, and Bill were joined by Clinton's chief of staff, Doug Band. Much more on him later, don't even worry about it. And 3 Secret Service agents. They're flying from New York to London, UK, which means... okay, this could potentially be the 1 Euro trip. Let's just write it in there. A couple days later, the same group returns from London back to New York, and this time they're joined by 7 more Secret Service agents and evil supermodel Naomi Campbell. I don't have any photos of Epstein or Clinton in either New York or London during this time frame, but we can verify that Naomi Campbell was in London on March 19th at the UK premiere of Ali G in the House. Booyakasha, big up the youth. Hear me now. Remember that? So funny. Anyway, back to the pedophile stuff. Now we get to Clinton's first use of Epstein's jet for Clinton Foundation business, presumably and allegedly. From May 22nd to 23rd, Doug Band, Clinton, Maxwell, and Epstein took the Lolita Express on a 5-leg trip to Asia. Hey, that one is accounted for in the statement. Nice going on the transparency, Bill. I just knew you were going to be honest about one of these trips. So this flight started in Japan, went to China, Singapore, Thailand, and Brunei. It's notable among Bill Clinton's flights for being the only trip where the logs don't specifically mention Secret Service accompanying him. Well, Fox News has made a huge deal out of this, claiming at one point that Clinton apparently ditched his Secret Service detail for at least 5 of the flights. Ooh, that sounds bad. But let's be as generous as possible here, because while it doesn't list Secret Service like all his other flights, it does list 6 packs coming. And I don't know what that means, so it could be Secret Service. And of course, even if Secret Service was along for the ride, That don't mean Clinton could have possibly done anything weird. Do people think these Secret Service guys are like a bunch of strict nannies or something?
They're like, infidelity on our watch? I think not. I think not, Bill.
Bill, you need a spanking.
Yes.
They're not gonna do that. Anyway, I got some rare photos for you from this trip from a Singaporean website. Here's Bill Clinton, Jeffrey Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell in Singapore hanging with Singaporean Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong and others. Ooh, Ghislaine and Jeffrey seated on opposite sides of the table. Maybe they were in a fight. Here's Bill walking with the Prime Minister, and you can see Epstein just over Goh Chok Tong's shoulder. So wild that he was just allowed to go to all these meetings. Some people say bring a beautiful woman with you to every meeting. I say bring a straight-up pedophile. People won't know what to do. Now, one other picture from this trip taken on Epstein's jet, apparently, when it was in Brunei. Classic photo. Bill's like,
all right, we'll take a photo. And Jeff, try not to look like you just took a big hit off an evil bong.
Moving on, June 7th, Epstein and Clinton both attended a gala in Ireland with Bono, according to former Colombian President Andrés Pastrana. I met Mr. Jeffrey Epstein in Ireland when I was honored at the Summit of Achievements in Dublin, a widely publicized ceremony that was attended by Mikhail Gorbachev, Bill Clinton, Bono, and Jeremy Irons. Epstein did fly to Ireland for that day, according to his flight logs, but Clinton didn't fly with him. July 11th of 2002, Clinton and his family attended the wedding of King Mohammed VI in Morocco. Now, there's a rumor about this event from Clinton's old chief of staff, a guy named Doug Band. Doug fucking Band. Who is this guy? Oh, nobody really, just the second most famous person to start their career as Bill Clinton's intern. Doug Band climbed the White House ladder to become extremely close to Clinton, somewhere in between a consigliere and an adopted son. From Vanity Fair's profile on him, Band virtually invented Clinton's post-presidential life. He set up Clinton's Harlem office, he helped launch the Clinton Foundation, created the Clinton Global Initiative, CGI, the annual Davos-style conference that Clinton hosted in New York. Band and Clinton circled the globe in a private jet with a rat pack of billionaires that included supermarket magnate Ron Burkle, movie producer Steve Bing, and infamously, Jeffrey Epstein. Before Clinton had quadruple bypass surgery in 2004, he dialed Band at the first sign of chest pains. There were years that Clinton spent more time with Band than any other person, including Hillary and Chelsea. So Doug Band shows up in the flight logs for every single Epstein flight that Bill Clinton took. Doug claimed he never liked Epstein, that he'd urged the former president to lose Epstein's number after getting weird vibes from him on the Africa trip. It wasn't the young girls, though. Apparently, it was all the bizarre lies Epstein told about himself. Band says Epstein told him he invented the derivatives market, which is an extremely Epstein thing to claim. Unfortunately for Bill, he didn't listen to his surrogate son and continued socializing with Jeffrey Epstein, using his jet, and taking his money. Now, the other fun thing about Doug is how much he hates Chelsea Clinton. Oh, you think you hate Chelsea Clinton? Well, compared to Doug, you may as well be her biggest fan. You're president of the Chelsea Clinton fan club. Compared to Doug, you've taken the Chell pill. Now, many have commented on the father-son-like bond between Bill and Doug, and Doug seems to have literally thought of himself as closer to Clinton than Clinton's own family. We know this because of what happened during a power struggle in the Clinton organization between Band and Chelsea. Band felt entitled to more power, seeing as he had basically built Clinton's post-presidential career from scratch. Then all of a sudden, who's this? It's Chelsea Clinton. You know, she walks in here, she's playing the biological daughter card and acting like she's entitled to a Clinton organization position, even though she doesn't even, get it the way Doug does. So Doug asked Bill to choose, Doug or Chelsea. Obviously, Bill picked his blood relative and Doug Band was out. Since then, Doug's been extremely gossipy about his time with Clinton, especially never missing an opportunity to smear Chelsea. So back to this 2002 wedding I mentioned in Morocco. Remember, Vanity Fair reported that Doug Band showed them a photo of Ghislaine Maxwell hanging out with Chelsea Clinton, apparently at that Moroccan wedding. Now, that photo's never been released to the public, but here's Bill and Chelsea there. Couldn't find any photos of Ghislaine there, but Vanity Fair does vouch that they saw Doug's photo. Don't worry, we'll be returning to the Doug Band Gossip Corner a few more times this video. And it does seem like Ghislaine and maybe even Epstein himself were also at the wedding, because Lolita Express flight logs from the next day, July 13th, 2002, show that Epstein, Maxwell, Clinton, Doug Band, and 8 Secret Service agents flew out of Morocco, made a stop in Portugal, and continued home to New York. I guess Bill ditched Chelsea for this trip. Better find your own ride, Chelsea. Now, this trip is, I think, accounted for in the statement as one of the 2 trips to Africa, even though technically it is just from Africa back to the US. And now we move to the most famous trip the Lolita Express ever took in September of 2002. Can't believe we're still in 2002. Huge year for Clinton and Epstein, eh? Now, the week of September 21st to 29th, 2002, Epstein and Clinton embarked on a massive 11-leg trip across Africa, ostensibly on Clinton Foundation business. Bill and Jeff flew from New York to Azores, to Ghana, to Nigeria, to Rwanda, to Mozambique, to Cape Town, to Johannesburg, back to Ghana, to France, and finally ended in Bedfordshire, UK. With them were mega celebrities. Chris Tucker, fresh off starring in Rush Hour. Kevin Spacey, fresh off starring in American Beauty. I have absolutely no evidence for this, but I feel like there's a good chance American Beauty is Epstein's favorite movie of all time. Now, both Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker have spoken about this trip. Here's Spacey doing his triumphant comeback tour on Piers Morgan a few months ago.
The airplane that we flew on for this humanitarian mission was owned by Jeffrey Epstein. And to then learn, oh, he was actually on some of those flights. And this Maxwell woman was on some of those flights.
He's making it sound like he barely knew Ghislaine, but here's Kevin Spacey and this Maxwell woman in 2002 sitting on thrones at the Queen's London residence, which is maybe something you'd expect him to remember.
Here's with
He and Ghislaine seems like they hit it off. You know what they say? Every pedophile madam needs their gay sex.
Gay best friend, yeah. This is a
their sex assault their best friend.
Yeah.
I didn't know him. I've never spent any time with him. I was with the Clinton Foundation people. That's who I was with. I didn't want to be around this guy because I felt he put the president at risk on that trip to South Africa because there were these young girls. And we were like, who is this guy? So I will say this.
There were young girls on those flights.
There were young girls on those flights.
I also think it's funny, he's like, there's all these young girls around. And it's like, well, you like young boys. So that's your problem.
Yeah.
It wasn't really.
It's like, where the boys at even?
It's insane to watch now, but Chris Tucker actually talked about this flight in a stand-up special from 2015.
Africa's great, man. I went on some great trips. I went to Africa one time with Bill Clinton. That was fun. We went to like 3-4 countries in Africa. And Clinton was great, man. He invited me to Africa, man. He invited me. He said, Tucker, you want to go to Africa with me? I think you'll like it. You're black. I'm black. I think you'll like it. Come on. It'll be fun. Come on.
Solid Clinton impression. Anyway, we got so many pictures from the Africa trip. Here's one of Clinton and Maxwell posing together on the plane. One of Epstein's sex slaves, Shantae Davis, was brought on this trip to act as a flight attendant. Here she is in uniform, with Epstein, with Tucker, with Clinton, and here she is giving Clinton a massage at an airport. Okay, so while Davis was actively being trafficked at this time, she was no longer underage. She would have been 22. She's also spoken about the flight, Clinton, and those creepy massage pictures. She told the Daily Mail, although the image looks bizarre, President Clinton was a perfect gentleman during the trip, and I saw absolutely no foul play involving him. We had a stopover for the jet to refuel, and while we were in the terminal, the ex-president was complaining of stiffness from falling asleep in his chair. Ghislaine chimed in to be funny and said that I could give him a massage. Everyone had a little chuckle, but Ghislaine, in her prim British accent, insisted and said,
"No, she's really good at massage, I promise."
The president then asked me, "Would you mind giving it a crack?" He turned his back to me, and I reached up and I started to rub out the kink in our former president's neck and shoulder.
There's people have been like, that's Chris Tucker. And I'm always like, is that does not look like
It
Chris
does
Tucker.
not look like Christopher. Look at that man. That man face is short.
It could be because it's
is
hard to tell
not
because we're
Chris
looking at him
Tucker.
straight on here and we're looking at him. in
I
profile
know
here.
black people. That is not him. I know his body.
Hollywood magic. You know his body.
I know his
Inside
body.
This trip involved another Epstein victim named Juliet Bryant, who was allegedly recruited in Cape Town, South Africa in September 2002, which lines up with their visit. According to court documents, Bryant was approached by American model Nadja Hill. Hill asked Juliet if she would like to meet Epstein, who she called the King of America. Hill described Epstein as a well-connected billionaire who could help her with her modeling career and explained that he was visiting Africa with a former high U.S. government official, a famous actor, and a well-known comedian. Very deranged that she describes Epstein as the King of America and former President Bill Clinton as some kind of a high government official. I don't know, he's a comptroller or something. In a truly harrowing article, Juliet Bryant told the Daily Beast about meeting Clinton and Epstein that night. I was a silly young 20-year-old and thought it sounded like such an amazing opportunity considering the people he was here with. That's what gave Epstein credibility, the fact that he was with Clinton. She also corroborated Spacey's claim that all the young girls around Epstein made him uncomfortable. Spacey, she said, was standoffish and thought we were a bit of a nuisance, while Tucker was friendly, but didn't interact with her very much. Apparently, Epstein liked her enough that he invited her back to his hotel suite in Cape Town the following day to go over her modeling book. She took the elevator to the suite and met 3 of Epstein's female assistants, who she was told worked for the agency Karen Models, in a large sitting room. Bryant remembers encountering Sarah Kellen and another young woman in particular. Reached by the Daily Beast, that woman confirmed meeting Bryant during the South Africa trip. Karen Models was an agency owned by Jean-Luc Brunel, French model scout and known child rapist. With Epstein's help, Brunel turned Karen Models into a sex trafficking front and then renamed it MC2, recruiting young girls for Epstein from all over the world. Bryant told the Daily Beast she approached the 3 assistants, who sat at a long table and paged through her portfolio. While they did that, Clinton walked through the room and said, "Hey guys." He and Epstein were sharing the presidential suite, Bryant recalled, adding that Clinton then retired to his own private room in the suite. Now, if this is true, it's a very bad look for Clinton. Juliette Bryant is a well-known victim of Epstein's who, after being recruited on this trip, would spend years trapped in sexual slavery by Epstein until her escape in 2004. She claims Clinton was sharing a hotel suite in Cape Town with Epstein and 3 girls claiming to be Karen Models, and one of those girls has confirmed meeting her there. That might be why this is one of only a handful of times that Clinton's people have responded to a claim about Epstein beyond just pointing people back to that vague Twitter post. Epstein's chief of staff, Angel Urania, defended his boss at the Daily Beast, saying the story's impossible because Epstein didn't even stay in Cape Town that night. Instead, he flew to Johannesburg, where he, amongst other things, met with Presidents Mbeki and Mandela. Epstein and Maxwell did not travel to Johannesburg. Then, of course, he did the classic Urania move and referred the Daily Beast to his original Twitter post. It could be argued that the Africa trip was the thing that took Epstein down. Up until this point, he'd done a fantastic job of keeping a low profile, flying under the radar, cozying up to powerful people, but staying out of public awareness. Then, perhaps blinded by Clinton's charisma, he decided to embark on a highly publicized, star-studded 11-leg charity trip. It raised his profile and got some people asking some innocent questions about him, and then some concerned questions, and then finally some very upsetting questions. Hey, wait a minute, maybe that's what Clinton wanted this whole time. Maybe he decided this is the best way to take Epstein down. Smart thinking, Mr. President. Welcome to the Digital Soldier Army. Email Michael Flynn for your digital dog tags. Now, this whole newfound interest in who the heck Jeffrey Epstein was spurred the New York Magazine article, Jeffrey Epstein, International Money Man of Mystery. Clinton, of course, is a prominent part of the article, and Jeffrey Epstein just fawns over his newfound friend in precisely the way you would expect someone who had spent about a decade planting friendship seeds. Beautiful women are only a part of it. Because here's the thing about Epstein. As some collect butterflies, he collects beautiful minds. There's another thing about Epstein, but they didn't know about that at this point. I invest in people. Be it politics or science, it's what I do, he has said to his friends. And his latest prize addition is the former president. In his eyes, Clinton as a species represents the highest evolutionary form of the political animal. To be up close to him, as he was during the African journey, is akin to seeing the rarest of beasts on a safari. As he put it to a friend upon his return from Africa, if you were a boxer at the downtown gymnasium at 14th Street and Mike Tyson walked in, your face would have the same look as these foreign leaders had when Clinton entered the room. He is the world's greatest politician. Now I want to pause to remind you all that this is the same article that has Donald Trump's famous quote about how Epstein likes beautiful women almost as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. So keep that in mind as you hear Bill Clinton's quote. Jeffrey's both a highly successful financier and a committed philanthropist with a keen sense of global markets and an in-depth knowledge of 21st century science, Clinton says through a spokesman.
What does your George W. Bush sound like?
Pretty much exact same.
Yeah.
I especially appreciated his insights and generosity during the recent trip to Africa to work on democratization, empowering the poor, citizen service, and combating HIV/AIDS.
See, this right here is the difference between Clinton and Trump. They are more similar to each other than I think either of their supporters would like to think, but Clinton is a lot smarter about hiding his indiscretions, and Trump just fully embraces them because his base actually doesn't care. They both got called up for the Epstein puff piece, and Clinton just says all this meaningless job interview bullshit. And then Trump just goes, Epstein, oh, he's one of the best there is. And quite frankly, loves raping kids. Can't get enough of it. Hope Melania's giving me a look. Was I not supposed to say that? Whoopsie doopsie. The article also mentions that he and Ghislaine Maxwell were spotted dining together at Nello's on Madison Avenue in New York. Now that's interesting because the book, A Convenient Death, The Mysterious Demise of Jeffrey Epstein, claims that in 2002, Clinton and Maxwell became romantically involved. Not sure what to make of all that. Interesting. Believable. Makes me feel gross. The final crossover of 2002 is going to be the one I have the least to say about. Apparently, sometime this year, no idea when, Jeffrey Epstein visited Bill Clinton at his office in Harlem. How do I know this? Because Angel Urenia mentioned it in his statement. Actually, this meeting is the only thing in Urenia's statement that I didn't already have confirmation of from elsewhere. I find that a bit weird because historically, Bill Clinton never admits to things he hasn't already been caught doing. Not often his move to get out in front of a scandal like that. The only thing I found is that the address to Clinton's Harlem office shows up in Epstein's address book, which I'll get into more in a second. All right, that's finally all the Clinton/Epstein stuff from 2002. Can you believe all that happened in 1 year? You know, time really flies when you're traveling the world with a child sex trafficker. Let's get into January of 2003, and good news if you're thirsty for tea, because we're heading back on down to Doug Band's Gossip Corner. Doug has claimed that Bill Clinton visited Jeffrey Epstein's island in January 2003, one of the only Clinton trips apparently that Doug Band refused to go on. This makes Doug the second person after Virginia Giuffre to place Clinton on the island. Like Virginia's story, there's no flight logs lining up with this visit, but again, it's possible Clinton was flown in on Ghislaine's helicopter or took another method of transport. It's also possible Doug is making this story up to hurt his former dad boss. I'm not gonna lie, that's extremely possible here. But from November 4th to November 9th, 2003, Bill Clinton and Doug Band do show up on the flight logs, along with Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and 4 Secret Service agents on a 5-leg trip across Europe and Asia. Belgium, to Norway, to Russia, to China. No pics of Clinton and Epstein on this trip. We have confirmation Clinton was in Oslo. Here he is with the Norwegian Prime Minister on November 4th. And here he is with the Norwegian King on November 5th. Oh, I thought Urenia said they only flew to Europe once, and that was the one they went to London together. Actually, though, I'm assuming this is the one that Urenia was referring to in the statement, since it's the trip with photos proving Bill was in these exact countries on these exact dates. Now, Vicky Ward's Chasing Ghislaine podcast has claimed that after this trip, Ghislaine and Clinton flew together on Ron Burkle's jet to India. Now, I was able to find a flight manifest from an unearthed email on an extremely sketchy right-wing website called Judicial Watch that appears to confirm this. Now, this might be a good time to introduce a segment of the timeline I refer to as the Maxwell shift. Do the Maxwell shift. Shift to the right. Maxwell shift to the left. No, that's not right. Don't let that catch on. Don't put that on TikTok and then let everyone want to do that move. At a certain point around Epstein's first arrest, you'll notice Clinton hanging out less and less with him and more just with his right-hand woman, Ghislaine Maxwell. Vicky Ward has theorized in the Chasing Ghislaine podcast that Ghislaine was using this opportunity to escape Epstein's world, which might be the case. Now, Vicky Ward is a lot more generous to Ghislaine than I would be. From where I'm standing, Maxwell is just about as responsible for the extent of Epstein's network and the scale of his abuse as Epstein himself. And I have a very difficult time thinking of her as a victim. Either way, you'll notice this shift taking place. In 2003, tax records show Ghislaine Maxwell donating $2,500 to Clinton Presidential Library and Foundation through her weird charity Terramar. In 2004, Clinton published his memoir, My Life. In 2015, Ghislaine's dog walker, Rasmus Alpsjo, took this photo of Ghislaine's copy. To Ghislaine with love. Now, this doesn't involve Clinton directly, but I think it's important to include at least one story like this, because there are many of them. In 2004, at his New York mansion, Epstein exposed himself to Italian model Elisabetta Tai and attempted to abuse her. She threw a dildo at him and ran, but Ghislaine stopped her on the way out. She told me that I couldn't just leave, said Tai. She said that this man is important, that he is a friend of President Clinton. Tai never told her booker what had happened at Epstein's mansion. I was too scared to tell anyone, she said. I was too shy and scared that someone would come after me to blackmail me or maybe worse. Epstein wielded his relationship with Clinton like a weapon against those he abused, using it to strike fear into their hearts. Knowing his connection to someone as powerful as Clinton surely caused many of his victims to remain silent. The Chasing Ghislaine podcast claims that in February of 2005, Clinton and Maxwell took the Lolita Express without Epstein to visit Japan, Taiwan, and China. A New York Times report on this visit at the time says he arrived in China on a private jet, but there's no mention of whose it was or whether Ghislaine was there. I've looked at the Lolita Express logs for February 2005. There are some redacted names, but they all seem too short for Clinton, who they usually took the time to write out in full. The list of names on these things, sometimes they're literally just like, J-E-G-M.
President William Clinton. Doug Band.
I doubt this was something Vicky Ward made up, but I'm so curious what her source is.
In 2005, the people who brought you the Clinton Foundation proudly present the Clinton Global Initiative, dedicated to connecting global leaders and elites for the purpose of having them...
What was that?
Implement solutions to the world's most pressing challenges.
Basically, Doug Band convinced President Clinton that he needed to create his own version of Davos because the people who broke the world deserve to have more than just one family reunion. Listen, call me practical effects because I am the enemy of CGI. I don't think it's good. How you like that, people who do think it's good? But my personal politics are besides the point here. Epstein is said to have donated $4 million to found the CGI. This is according to Sarnoff's book, Trafficking. That's one word, trafficking, but the K is capitalized, so it's kind of like trafficking. Get it? Anyway, Sarnoff was told this by a source, but was, quote, unable to verify or refute the amount of this claim since the organization's accounting records do not disclose the information and Clinton did not return my call. Yeah, Sarnoff's source is kind of sketch to me, even setting aside the lame pun of a title. She also may or may not be connected to Israeli Mossad. There's a bunch of stuff in trafficking that I haven't been able to corroborate elsewhere, like she's the only one citing the $4 million figure, and even she acknowledges that that might be fake. Only other source I've got on Epstein funding CGI is somehow even less trustworthy, Epstein's lawyers Gerald B. Lefcourt and Alan Dershowitz. In a 2007 letter to federal prosecutors during Epstein's trial, they claimed Epstein not only funded the organization, but was part of the group that came up with the idea for it.
Your Honor, ask yourself this. Would a sex pervert hang out with Bill Clinton?
Yes.
I retract the question. Around 2004 to 2005, Epstein's butler Juan Alessi would steal his so-called black book of addresses. And here's something you'd never expect. There aren't any numbers listed for Bill Clinton. What? Yeah, he's not there. I guess he must be innocent. But wait, look at the numbers listed for Clinton's adopted son, Doug Band. Now, you got Band's name wrong, there's no S, but there's 25 different contact methods listed. These are huge numbers. Wait a minute. What if Doug Band was the one Epstein really wanted a friendship with this whole time, and he was only hanging out with Clinton to get close to Doug, someone he could info dump to about inventing derivative markets? Could it be? Well, I don't think so. Take a closer look at these numbers. Some of the notes imply that these are ways of getting in touch with Clinton, not with Doug. For example, the last number there says, number 42, do not use. Number 42, Bill Clinton was the 42nd president. Were they speaking in code to protect Clinton from the association? And here's another code. The very first thing listed under Doug Band is Office of William J. Clinton. I admit that code is easier to crack. 2005 was the year Palm Beach police started investigating Epstein and uncovering dozens of young girls who'd been abused by him. At some point in the next couple years, Epstein must have felt the walls closing in. In 2006, Epstein donated $25,000 to one of Clinton's charities through his own charity, the COUQ Foundation, and I'm going to go ahead and pronounce that COUQ, which I think is the least gross option. COUQ was listed on the Clinton Foundation website for a long time and can still be seen on this archive page from 2021. More donations. In March of 2007, Maxwell donated $2,300 to Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. Bit of a waste of money, thanks Obama. Epstein's trial in June of 2006 resulted in a conviction of a relatively minor charge, one count of soliciting a prostitute. After this indictment, Epstein reportedly donated $25,000 to Hillary's campaign, which she did not return. This is the last direct link I know of between Epstein himself and any of the Clintons. After he pled guilty and served his time in prison, Epstein lost a lot of his high-profile friendships and connections, but don't feel too bad for the guy, because even in tough times, there's always people like Bill Gates. Somehow, Ghislaine Maxwell was pretty much unharmed by the controversy, at least at first. If anything, she got even closer to Bill Clinton and his circle. In 2007, we got this photo of her and Doug Band. Actually, now seems like a good time for another bit of Doug Band gossip, but this time, we're turning the tables. Gossip about Doug Band. Finally, some retribution for the Chelsea Clinton stands in the crowd. There's a Ghislaine Maxwell deposition from 2016 that someone did a hilariously bad job of redacting all the names. So, okay, let me explain. Say we want to know if Ghislaine said anything about Bill Clinton. Well, it's hard to tell since all the names are blacked out. Weirdly, the deposition still has its index attached. Wouldn't it be crazy if we could just look him up there? Nah, nothing. Of course they thought of that. Wait a second. There is a blacked out name in the index right in between clients and clock with a ton of references next to it. So the index gives us a page number and the line number, so if we check one of them out, have you traveled on Jeffrey's planes with President Clinton?
Yes, I have.
Would that have been in 2002?
It's very hard for me to recollect exact dates, but that sounds about right.
And by the way, don't worry, Ghislaine, we'll be heavily redacting this deposition, so any names you give us will be completely secure. I mean, I guess there's the 1 in a million chance that some super sleuth out there understands alphabetical order. Well, then we'd really be screwed. Anyway, nothing here is really useful or interesting, unfortunately. Ghislaine doesn't give them anything. But there is a weird section about Doug Band. Do you know who Doug Band is?
I do.
How do you know him?
He used to work or still works for...
Did you ever have a relationship with him?
We are talking about adult consensual relationships. It's off the record.
I'm not asking what you did with him. I'm asking if you ever had a...
Confidential relationship with him.
If you understand the term relationship, certainly you can answer that.
Define relationship.
Somebody that you would have spent time together, either seeing them in a romantic relationship or...
You need to be... What do you mean by romantic? I was friends with Dad, but you are suggesting something more, so I want to be clear what you're actually asking me.
You defined it. You said you were friends with him. If that's what you were, that's all I need to know. Okay, to be 100% real here, I have no idea what this means. Why did Ghislaine get so weird about Doug? Did they have a romance at some point, or was she just being difficult? I can honestly say, this is one Jeffrey Epstein mystery I would be more than happy to never get to the bottom of. Even the guy interrogating her is like, okay, you were friends, great. No further questions. Let's move on before I picture you guys having sex. In 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty to procuring a child for prostitution and of soliciting a prostitute. And I feel like I shouldn't have to point out that this charge does not even make grammatical sense because a child cannot be a prostitute, only a victim of child sex trafficking. Let's move right along here. April of 2009, Virginia Giuffre testifies that Clinton is one of Epstein's close friends and names him as a material witness to her lawyers Brad Edwards and Scarola. Do you have any recollection of Jeffrey Epstein specifically telling you that Bill Clinton owes me favors? Yes, I do. I remember asking Jeffrey, what's Bill Clinton doing here? He laughed and said, well, he owes me a favor. He never told me what favors they were, I never knew. He told me a long time ago that everyone owes him favors, they're all in each other's pockets. Also, our saucy friend Doug Band would like to dish about 2009. Apparently, Chelsea Clinton and her boyfriend Mark Mazvinsky partied with Ghislaine on Ghislaine's new boyfriend's yacht, according to two people familiar with the relationship between Maxwell and the Clintons. Doug Band spoke on the record about Chelsea's friendship with Ghislaine with this classic Doug Band line. Ghislaine had access to yachts and nice homes. Chelsea needed that. I find Doug Band's never-ending rivalry with his ex-boss's daughter very funny. It's been described as Shakespearean, but to me, it comes off more Real Housewives. The only thing this band plays is Chelsea Clinton like a fool. All right, now we have one more person who placed Clinton on Epstein's island, and that's Steve Scully. Steve was Epstein's tech guy on Little St. James Island, the guy who made sure the Wi-Fi was still working, I guess. I saw Bill Clinton sitting with Jeffrey on their living room porch area, which was Jeffrey's favorite spot. I saw no other guests there at that time at all. I just thought, hey wow, Jeffrey's sitting with Bill Clinton. Annoyingly for me, Scully has never specified what year he saw Clinton on the island, and since he worked for Epstein from 1999 to 2009, this Clinton sighting could have happened any time in that period. Quick recap on the 3 island sightings. Virginia Giuffre places him there sometime from 1999 to 2001. Doug Band says Clinton was there in January of 2003, so unlikely they were talking about the same visit. Then Scully places him there sometime between 1999 and 2009, which could fit either of the other 2 sightings. So 2009, lawyers for Epstein's victims were trying desperately to get Ghislaine Maxwell to sit for a deposition, but she kept ducking them. They ended up serving her by cornering her right as she was leaving a Clinton Foundation event, upsetting her greatly. Ghislaine's lawyer then informed the legal team that Ghislaine couldn't appear at her deposition because she was overseas in Europe. I didn't realize you were just allowed to do that. Like, oh, I'd love to face justice, but I'm going to be out of town. But then People magazine published photos of Chelsea Clinton's wedding in New York, which was held the same day Ghislaine was supposed to testify. And would you look at who's poking her head out as Bill walks Chelsea down the aisle? Something tells me Ghislaine wasn't in Europe after all. And that something is photographic evidence. Now, a lot of people pointed out that it's unfair the way people take all of Bill Clinton's lies, flaws, and indiscretions, including but not limited to his friendship with Epstein, and paint Hillary Clinton with the same brush. There's obviously a lot of misogyny at play here. From the beginning of Bill Clinton's presidency, most of his non-sex-related scandals were focused on Hillary. There's Whitewater, Travelgate, and there's zero evidence of Hillary engaging in sexual misconduct, and I don't think we should hold people accountable for the crimes that their spouse may have committed. That said, there are plenty of things concerning Hillary and Epstein that earn her at least an eyebrow raise, like accepting his money in 2007 after his indictment. Another example is Hillary hiring Ghislaine Maxwell's nephew, Alexander Gerasi, straight out of college to work as a staff assistant at the U.S. State Department. He held that job from May of 2009 to June of 2012. And it's not like she was hanging out on one of Epstein's properties, but the deep bind this family had with Maxwell is troubling and should be called out. We're in 2009 now, which is the point Urania's statement marks as the definite end of Clinton's relationship with Epstein. So let's review the meetings Urania told us about. We got the Harlem office, thanks for that one, Angel, and the New York apartment meeting. Of course, this doesn't mention their meeting at the White House, the dinner with Ron Perelman's, or any of Clinton's meetings with Ghislaine Maxwell, which Urania definitely should have disclosed as well if his aim was transparency. In September of 2012, Maxwell launched her weird, vague Terramar program, which aims to clean up the oceans by doing something. The Daily Caller and Sarnoff's book claimed Terramar was at least partially funded by the Clinton Foundation, but neither of those sources are especially trustworthy. But here's a fun experiment you can do right now. Go to the Clinton Foundation website and search Terramar. You should still find a couple pages bragging about how the Clintons' charity is partnering with Ghislaine Maxwell to help clean up the oceans. Now, those are gone by the time you check. Then I want to thank the Clinton Foundation for making it this far into the video. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to say that I'm an amazing swimmer, I test all my drugs, and I love life way too much to ever kill myself. Why'd I commit suicide when I got all this swimming and drugs to do? I simply would not. So this explanation of Maxwell's delusional product says they aim for creating a standing and permanent citizenship of the ocean. What the H, you might be asking? What the H does that mean? Was Maxwell seriously trying to build her own country on international waters to escape prison? Well, when she was deposed in April 2016, Ghislaine was asked about what countries she had citizenship in. Are you a citizen of the United States?
I am.
Are you also a citizen of England?
I am.
Are you a citizen of any other land?
Terramar.
That's the name of your charity project that deals with oceans, is that right?
Yeah, I'm French as well.
She just casually claimed under oath to be a citizen of America, England, Terramar, and France. It's so much funnier that she didn't say Terramar last. Sometimes I feel like Ghislaine Maxwell lives in her own speculative science fiction novel.
I'm a proud citizen of Terramar. Our people wage a popular rebellion against the intergalactic monarchy, who refuses to abolish their draconian age of consent laws.
In October of 2012, a visitor to Epstein's place in New York snaps this photo of some wall art Epstein's got hanging up. Epstein never had great taste in interior design, but this one is unsettling even for him. The piece is called Parsing Bill, and it was made by Australian artist Patrina Ryan Cleed in 2012 when she was a student. It depicts Clinton in the Oval Office wearing what is meant to be Monica Lewinsky's famous blue dress. The one hanging in Epstein's mansion is a print, not the original. And here's a companion piece. George W. Bush playing Jenga. It's called War Games, and we're getting dangerously close to the 9/11 truth movement, and this is supposed to be an Epstein video, so let's just move on. Okay, in February of 2014, the New York Post reports that after attending a gala, Clinton had an intimate dinner with a few friends, including Ghislaine Maxwell. For the next part of this timeline, I want to talk a little bit about how some true disturbing facts about Clinton have been twisted and exaggerated by some enemies of the Democratic Party. The deranging of truth. So you gotta understand, Hillary and Bill Clinton have, for a long time, been favorite boogeymen of right-wing media and online conspiracy theorists, which seem less and less like two separate groups. Both of Hillary's runs for president, but especially the one from 2015 and 2016, no doubt added fuel to this fire. Epstein didn't actually get a lot of coverage in mainstream news until 2015, when it looked like Hillary Clinton was going to run for president again. And it was really only the right-wing media that wanted to dig into this. Well, obviously, I'm glad that the Epstein story was finally getting a bit of attention. I have a lot of issues with the way it was covered. For example, in 2016, Fox News claims to have obtained court documents showing that Clinton took 26 trips on Epstein's jet, often without Secret Service. They never published the documents to prove this, but now that some Lolita Express logs are public, you can get up to 26 if you count each individual leg of each flight as one complete trip, but it's not really an accurate way of understanding their connection. You don't say you rode the bus 26 times because it made 26 stops between you getting on and off. There's certain people you just don't make stuff up about, you know? You don't need to be like, and Hitler was really rude to waiters. The truth is already bad. Clinton took a ton of flights on Epstein's plane and then he lied about them. That's already pretty rough. Did the focus groups at Fox say that anything under 20 was an okay number of trips to take on Nabokov Airlines? As I discussed in my video about Trump's ties to Epstein, conservative media dropped the Clinton-Epstein talking point around the same time Donald Trump joined the race. It didn't make sense to talk about Hillary's ties to Epstein and Maxwell when the other side could just point out Donald Trump's. And for what it's worth, the Democrats appear to have made the exact same calculation. But at some point, Trump's side figured out a neat trick so they could have it both ways. Tied into the scandal about Hillary's emails came something we now know as
Pizzagate.
Okay. Pizzagate. Now we're getting ready for the truth. No. This is why you click the video.
Okay, bit of story time here. Way back when Chill Goblin was just an edgy young man who, thank God, had no internet presence, I used to spend a lot of time on 4chan's infamous B-board. Even back then, this anonymous image board had plenty of Nazis and pedophiles, but I felt like dealing with them was worth it because the jokes and memes were pretty funny. Is that bad? Probably, but you are not allowed to judge me if you still have a Twitter account. There's a whole category of pedophile-themed memes, inside jokes between edgelords and actual pedophiles who can sometimes be hard to tell apart online. Chris Hansen images showed up a lot. Another one was Pedo Bear. So the joke was, he's a cartoon bear, but he's also attracted to children. Get it? I guess he had to be there. Then there were the initials CP. And the joke was that every time the initials CP showed up anywhere in the world, they actually stood for child pornography. Communist Party, Captain Picard, and of course, cheese pizza, child pornography. So the concept of cheese pizza being code for child pornography started as a small part of a very stupid running joke online. Somehow, though, it became the essential spark for Pizzagate when John Podesta's emails were leaked. Some found it suspicious the amount of times pizza was mentioned. They're ordering pizzas. They're going out for pizzas. There's a mention of a pizza-related handkerchief. The focus of Pizzagate was a pizza shop in D.C., and it eventually led to a man showing up with a gun attempting to rescue the children. R.I.P. that guy, by the way. He just died earlier this month, shot by police. And the name of the pizza shop was Comet Ping Pong. Note the initials there. Stupid 4chan memes were metamorphosizing into so-called evidence of child sex abuse, and the possibility was never really considered that, hey, maybe pizza is just really delicious and one of the most common foods to get when you need to feed a whole room full of people? This confusing mess created a way for Trump supporters to have their pizza and eat it too. Like many conspiracy theories, it was based on a germ of truth. Jeffrey Epstein, a billionaire pedophile with genuinely worrying ties to Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. But it was spun into a much larger, much sillier narrative, weaving in tropes from the Satanic Panic and implicating just about everyone in the Democratic Party in ritual child sex abuse, all the while delusionally painting Trump as a crusading protector of children. The focus wasn't even really on Bill Clinton anymore, it was his wife, Hillary. A core belief in Pizza World involves the supposed existence of a film called Frazzle Drip, which depicts Hillary Clinton killing a child and wearing their face as a mask. It was very dumb, very violent, and very, very useful for the Trump campaign and administration, which boosted this narrative several times. During Trump's term, Pizzagate evolved into the QAnon movement, whose followers believed a white hat, aka undercover good guy, had embedded himself into the deep state and was communicating in code on anonymous image board posts called Q drops. For reasons too stupid to get into even here, Q's code name for Hillary was Alice and the CIA was Wonderland. Despite the 2016 election being long over by the time Q became a thing, Hillary continued to be a major part of the lore. Q brought up Bill Clinton several times as well, first in Drop 1055, then again later in 3131, 3133, 3362, and 3508. That first Clinton post contains this photo of Bill on a private jet with a young girl. Epstein's plane. Who is she? Follow friends. Friends lead to others. Open source. Q. Q encouraged his followers to look into this photo, find the young lady, and then look into who her friends are. And honestly, this is not actually an unreasonable thing to do. Scrutinizing old photos and finding obscure connections between people describes around 90% of my research for this video. So let's take Q's advice and look into this picture a little bit. This photo is another rare instance of Angel Urania chiming in, and he said simply, this photograph was not taken on Epstein's airplane. And I don't really take anything Angel says too seriously, but as someone who spent a lot of time looking very closely at photos of Epstein's jets, I can confidently say Urania's right. The plane in this photo is not Epstein's. Now, Snopes and the Daily Dot have both investigated this photo, and they say it's been online since 2006, originally shared on Gawker with a caption describing Clinton and a 19-year-old college student on a jet belonging to a completely different billionaire pervert, Ron Burkle. Now, Ron Burkle's name has actually come up a few times in this video already. He was one of the celebrities who came along on Epstein and Clinton's fateful trip to Africa. We all remember 2002, we all remember Tucker Mania and Spacey Fever, but what about Burkle-fluenza? Ron Burkle is another billionaire friend of Clinton's, famous for soliciting super high-end call girls. Similar to Burkle's friend Epstein, he has a private jet with a gross nickname, Airfuck1. Clinton and Burkle were so tight that Bill reportedly had his own personal bedroom in Burkle's mansion. Burkle was also good friends with Michael Jackson and ended up buying Neverland Ranch in 2020.
I was at a friend of mine's house in La Jolla, Ron Burkle.
He was also extremely close with Diddy, his business partner both in Sean John and the failed water company Aquahydrate. He's even the godfather to Diddy's children. I gotta tell you, I really feel for Burkle, because I would be devastated to learn even one of my best friends was a serial child rapist. But if it was my whole circle getting caught one by one, I don't think I'd be able to go outside again. Another one of my boys is into kids. That's Jackson, Epstein, and Diddy. Jeez, you're like my only normal friend left, pedo bear. Right? He's a bear and he's attracted to children. That's funny, right? Or at least that's technically a joke, I think. I don't know if I get it. Now back to Q's photo. Further research revealed this college student to be Rachel Chandler, a member of the uber-wealthy media empire-owning Chandler family, who around 2006 were competing with Burkle over ownership of the Tribune Company, which controls newspapers like the LA Times. Now, unlike a lot of liberals who'll just debunk the Epstein connection and then leave it there, I would never tell you there isn't still probably some weird rich people stuff going on here. What the hell Bill Clinton was doing hanging out with elites like Burkle and the Chandlers while they decide who gets to control the media is an open question. The plane is called Air Fuck One, for Christ's sake. Billionaires are universally gross and devious, and you are always justified to be suspicious of their movements. But you gotta admit, the fact that this photo has absolutely nothing to do with Epstein does make Q look like a complete moron.
I'm so jealous of, like, imagine if your video was just that. Like, you didn't have to put in months of research. You could have just been like, Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, seems suspicious, don't you think? That's it.
Yeah. Follow friends.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
I am jealous of his low effort.
Oh my God.
Like, he's got the easiest job in the world.
Dream influencer job.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, I've looked into the Pizzagate stuff and the QAnon stuff, and I mean this truly. I think it would be really interesting if anything new and credible actually was unearthed by those movements. How great would that be? Pizzagate was right, and here's why. It would be an amazing thumbnail for this video. Unfortunately for my click-through rate, there's absolutely nothing there that rises even close to the level of credibility I would need for inclusion in this video. Now, I know for some people, QAnon stuff's gonna be hard to give up, and maybe it's helpful to know that the Clintons still have plenty of actual skeletons in their closet. You want a photo of Clinton with a young girl? We got the massage photo. You want a rare photo of Clinton on Epstein's plane? Here's one from the Fontanella collection. You want more dirt on Clinton? There is so much, but here's one of the juicier factoids. Did you know that the Clintons had slaves? No, I'm dead serious. When they lived at the Arkansas governor's mansion in the 80s, Bill and Hillary Clinton had unpaid black convicts in their 30s work in the house and the yard. If they broke any rules, the Clintons would send them back to prison. Hillary wrote about it in her own book, It Takes a Village, as if it was a heartwarming story of race relations. It's both legally and factually correct to say that the Clintons had slaves. Go ahead and bust that out in your woke lib niece. She'll love it. Not only will that secure you an invitation to the cousin walk, the two of you could even team up and ruin Thanksgiving together. It's so heartwarming. And now that I've cured you of the QAnon mind virus, why don't we talk about post-structuralist gender theory? According to Judith Butler, gender is not prediscursive, but actually a performance. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that to you. I do have a video on gender theory you can check out if you want. Anyway, let's put Pizzagate and QAnon aside. In this video and as a society. So around this whole, QAnon time, when right-wing media was sourcing their Epstein stories from anime porn image board posts, there was also plenty of real news that absolutely could have been reported about the two men. In 2016, Epstein victim Joburg testified that she was told by Epstein, Clinton likes them young, referring to girls. 60 Minutes producer Ira Rosen had been planning a 2016 episode about Jeffrey Epstein, which was scrapped for unknown reasons. He claimed later in his memoir that in 2016, he asked Ghislaine Maxwell for Epstein's tapes of Trump with young girls. She implied that such tapes did exist, but if he wanted the Trump stuff, he'd also have to show tapes of Clinton. That's quite an interesting claim, but not many Q types have delved into it. Probably because it implicates their guy too. Fortunately, the public did not hear about any of this until much later, and genuine news regarding Epstein was mostly ignored or brushed aside by liberal media. The main exception to this would be Julie K. Brown's incredible investigative journalism work in her series Perversion of Justice. Through her journalism, she was able to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Epstein content can still be good even if it has a cheesy pun as a title. Julie K. Brown's work played a major part in the events of that fateful day, July 6th, when Epstein was arrested and QAnon had possibly their biggest ever win, where they were almost kind of right about something if we're being generous. You would expect that, Epstein's arrest would have been a great opportunity for every journalist in existence to start asking Bill Clinton to his face, hey man, what was up with that whole Epstein thing? Asking Clinton about Epstein. As you know by this point, Angel Urania gave that statement on Clinton's behalf a few days after, and I'll get to the final scorecard on that in a second, but I want to quickly show every single time, to my knowledge, Bill Clinton or people close to him have been directly questioned about this case. Let's start with Bill's friend, James Patterson, interviewed in New York Magazine on July 15th, 2019. Patterson is the world's second richest author after J.K. Rowling, and he wrote one of the earliest and certainly the most prominent Epstein book, Filthy Rich. Solid pun, by the way. He also co-wrote a book called The President is Missing with Bill Clinton. In the days after Epstein's arrest, New York Magazine was pretty direct with him. There are so many ongoing mysteries involved in this story. For example, do you think Epstein will implicate other prominent people? We had talked to people who flew Epstein's plane with President Clinton and got no evidence that there was anything inappropriate there. That's what we found. Names are going to come up for sure. The fact that you were at a party and Epstein was at a party, though, I don't know what the hell that is supposed to mean. And you just wrote a book with President Clinton. We're friendly. You'd hate to think that something... We had no evidence. It would have been horrifying if we had come up with something, but we came up with nothing. Then on August 10th, 2019, Epstein was found dead in his cell of an apparent suicide. A couple months later, in October 2019, Trevor Noah interviewed Hillary and Chelsea Clinton on his show. He decided to spook them by pretending to be an actual journalist for 2 seconds.
Hillary, I have to ask you a question that has been plaguing me for a while. How did you kill Jeffrey Epstein? Because you're not in power, but you have all the power. I really need to understand how you do what you do. Because you seem to be behind everything nefarious, and yet you do not use it to become president. What is the game plan?
Well, Trevor.
But honestly, though, what does it feel like being the boogeyman of the right?
Well, it's a constant surprise to me.
No, let them answer, Trevor. I mean, whether or not they were involved in Epstein's death, which, I'm sorry, but that is a small possibility here, they both knew Ghislaine Maxwell and presumably were very familiar with the story. Even if they honestly didn't know about what she'd done to those girls, they should have to answer for that friendship. Chris Tucker talked about Jeffrey Epstein on the All Urban Central podcast without the host letting him chuckle his way out of it. I love this clip because the interview's tone is so casual and everybody's laughing, having a good time, but these are extremely loaded questions.
You knew Jeffrey Epstein, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. We flew Bill Clinton and a lot of different. That was a humanitarian trip to Africa, and I met him on that trip because it was his plane. Yeah, I met him, and you don't know people what they do in their private lives, so yeah.
But tell me this, Chris. You was on this private plane, and you could tell that it was a private plane because they called it, Lolita Express?
Oh, yeah, it was a private plane, yes. Oh, yes.
But wait a minute. You didn't never go to that island, did you?
No. I don't know where that thing at. No. I don't think. Hey, we was going to Africa to save lives.
I appreciate the directness. And to his credit, Tucker didn't dodge any of the questions, and as far as I can tell, seemed to answer them honestly. Finally, in November 2022, Bill Clinton himself was confronted about Epstein at a midterm campaign stop.
Any comments on the alleged allegation of your connection with Jeffrey Epstein? No.
Man, he's really lost a step by this point, eh? He used to be the smoothest guy ever, but now when he's backed into a corner, I guess his strategy is to pretend he sees someone else and then walk away mumbling. Maybe that's who Joe Biden got it from. You can see Angel Urania behind him, butting in and then telling Clinton to just keep walking. Then it's hard to tell, but I think Urania goes around and you can hear him say, "Hey, my guy, that's what you call journalism?" Hey, my guy, that's what you call journalism? Well, what do we call journalism? Like, seriously, doesn't it seem like whatever journalism happened here was insanely incomplete? Doesn't it seem odd that the guy from The Fifth Element was grilled more over one trip on the Lolita Express than the former US president was for 6. I mean, say what you will about Donald Trump, and I literally have, but he has at least let people ask about his connection to Epstein a couple times. He even answers them, even if it is with a mix of total denial, obvious lies, and still refusing to condemn Ghislaine Maxwell at all. To be fair, Bill is much less in the public eye than Trump is, but I would argue he's also much more in the public eye than Chris Tucker. GOB-PINION. So, promise you, I tell you my gob thoughts here. Is Bill Clinton guilty? Did he participate in the abuse? Did he know about the abuse, but just refuse to say anything about it? Well, just like with Donald Trump, at the end of the day, there is no smoking gun, only circumstantial connections. Obviously, not everyone who ever hung out with Epstein or had their photo taken with him or even visited his island is guilty of the most forgivable crimes. I think we all know this. The more you hang out with Epstein, the more of an eyebrow raise you get, but it's not possible to leap to something definitive even when your eyebrows are floating 3 feet above your head. So, I can't prove anything in a way that would hold up in a court of law, but I bet that I could at least make an argument that would meet the burden of proof required for an Encyclopedia Brown short story. You ever read those books? Boy Detective Encyclopedia basically solves every mystery the same way. He hears somebody's story, and then he uses his encyclopedic knowledge, hence the name, to poke one tiny hole in it, and then it disproves all of the other parts of the story. So Bugs Meany says he couldn't have stolen the red bicycle because he was busy attending the bar mitzvah of his pet mourning gecko. But that can't be true, because mourning geckos are all female. Hand over the bike, Bugs. With that in mind, I'm sorry, but I have a really hard time giving Bill Clinton the benefit of the doubt on all this when there are so many holes in this statement from Angel Urenia. Let's take one final look here. The evidence has cast doubt on most of these things. He's never been to Little St. James. He didn't know anything about Epstein's crimes. Reading over this again, I think my favorite part is about how on every flight, Clinton was accompanied by supporters of the Clinton Foundation, because that could literally refer to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And speaking of Maxwell, again, huge red flag for Urania not to mention her friendship with Bill and his family. But claiming that Clinton took a total of 4 trips on Epstein's jet from 2002 to 2003 is an outright lie. And I just have to ask, why the fuck would he lie here if he had nothing to hide? It's annoying when Fox News inflates the number of trips Bill and Epstein took, but it's far worse when Bill Clinton actually conceals flights. Outside
6 is too many, I think.
Too many?
Yeah.
No, don't say 6. Don't put 6. Don't put 6.
Yeah.
He's like watching Randy type it out. No, don't say 6. That sounds horrible. Like, switch it.
4 at most.
We've all taken 4 trips on a pedophile
plane.
Yeah.
So here we are, right? You, me, Encyclopedia, Sally Kimball. We're sitting in a rowboat outside Little St. James using the Encyclopedia Brown method of determining guilt. Obviously, the EBM is not enough to prove anything definitively, but I think it's reasonable for things like this to affect your personal opinion. Like, let's pretend that before I saw Urania's statement, I was completely agnostic about this, right? Like, on the I think he's guilty scale, let's pretend I gave Clinton a 5 out of 10, right in the middle. But now, knowing that he made shit up to try and cover his ass, I think I had to bump that up to at least a 6, right? A 7 maybe, 1 point for each flight? But there's just one little problem. Bill Clinton didn't technically say any of this. It was his chief of staff, the angel on his shoulder. Clinton has studiously avoided making any claims on this topic for years. At least, he was doing that until a few months ago. That's right. I have one final part of this cursed timeline to share here involving something Bill wrote in his book Citizen, published in November 2024, and it concerns the island. Now, Citizen represents one of the very few times Clinton has ever mentioned Jeffrey Epstein publicly. It's a very, very short section. It's less than 2 pages long. Here it is in full. It's pretty annoying that this came out when I was already mostly done the script centering around Angel Urenia's statement, but luckily for the amount of work I had to do, there's almost nothing new here, except this part.
I have never visited Epstein's island. There was one of my former staffers who fed the story to Vanity Fair, and he knew it wasn't true when he said it.
Okay, that's gotta be Doug Band. I could definitely see him making that up. Band's gonna band.
Another person reportedly said she'd seen me on the island, but that I didn't do anything wrong. However, in early 2024, unsealed deposition showed that she'd only heard I was there, but didn't actually see me.
Very funny for Clinton to be like, first thing, I was never there. Second, I have a witness who says when I was there, I didn't do anything wrong. Third, actually, she was lying about that. Anyway, he's being vague, but based on context clues, it's pretty simple to figure out he's talking about Epstein victim Virginia Roberts Giuffre. If only because out of the 3 people who have placed him there, Virginia is the only one with she/her pronouns. See? Pronouns are helpful. If it weren't for woke, we wouldn't have been able to uncover Bill Clinton's lies here. Thanks, woke! Now, when I read this line from Clinton's new book about how Virginia's claim had been rescinded, multiple alarm bells went off in my head. I was pretty sure I'd read all Virginia Giuffre's unsealed testimony, and I was 100% sure that I had never seen her ever recant placing Clinton on the island to begin with. What the hell was Bill talking about? Okay, let's return to Virginia's island story. When Bill writes that someone reportedly said she'd seen me on the island, he's referring to her story as reported in the Daily Mail article I showed you earlier. It includes this line. On one occasion, she adds, Epstein did invite 2 young brunettes to a dinner which he gave on his Caribbean island for Mr. Clinton shortly after he left office. As far as she knows, the ex-president did not take the bait. That's the part Bill paraphrases as, she says I didn't do anything wrong. Virginia goes on to describe the dinner with Bill, Epstein, Maxwell, and 2 young brunettes who she guessed were no older than 17. That is, this is the story as reported by the Daily Mail, but there's a problem. As I've mentioned, the Daily Mail is a garbage tabloid for idiots, and we shouldn't trust anything they say about anything. They've even previously fabricated or misconstrued quotes from Virginia that she had to clarify later. So just like the Daily Mail's claims about Jeffrey visiting the White House 17 times, I need at least one other source to verify that Virginia even told this story. Luckily, we have 3. Virginia also wrote about the island dinner in the manuscript for her unpublished memoir, The Billionaire's Playboy Club, which was submitted as evidence in Giuffre's case against Ghislaine Maxwell in 2015, and then unsealed in 2019. Why wasn't it published? Obviously because of the shadowy cabal controlling the memoir industry that will not publish any book about Epstein whose title isn't a stupid pun. Billionaire's Playboy Club, that's too direct, Virginia. If you're watching this, try calling it Sexual Assault and Pepper, and watch the bidding war start. Anyway, so in this book, Giuffre tells basically the same story, but she's much less diplomatic about guessing what Bill's intentions were. The next big dinner party on the island had another significant guest appearance being the one and only Bill Clinton. This wasn't a big party as such, only a few of us were eating at the dinner table. There was Jeffrey at the head of it all, as always. On the left side was Ghislaine and I. Sitting across the table from us was Bill with 2 lovely girls who were visiting from New York. Bill's provocative, cheeky side came out, teasing the girls on either side of him with playful pokes and brassy comments. There was no modesty between any of them. We all finished our meals and scattered in our own different directions. Jeffrey wanted his evening massage before bed, leaving our guest of honor to find company elsewhere. Strolling into the darkness with 2 beautiful girls around either arm, Bill seemed content to retire for the evening. Said it before and I'll say it again, this is gross.
Virginia also told her lawyers about seeing Bill Clinton on the island in a transcribed telephone interview from 2011. When you say you asked him why is Bill Clinton here, where was here? On the island. When you were present with Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton on the island, who else was there? Ghislaine, and there was 2 young girls that I could identify. I never really knew them well anyways, it was just 2 girls from New York. And were all of you staying at Jeffrey's house on the island, including Bill Clinton? That's correct, he had about 4 or 5 different villas on his island, separate from the main house, and we all stayed in the villas.
And if that's not enough, Giuffre has also tweeted about this story. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why Clinton was on the island with 2 girls walking him to a cabana. So Virginia's told the same story about Bill on the island with the 2 girls 3 times, but I'm still confused. Where did she say that actually she never saw him on the island? Well, I think I found it. I pored over all the documents that were released in January 2024. Okay, to be honest, I just Control-F the documents for mentions of Clinton. Okay, to be even more honest, I didn't find it. I asked this question on the R. Epstein subreddit and somebody else dug something up for me. Shout out to you, Automatic USA. I'm not sure where you are, but thank you for finding this for me. Okay, so bear with me because this part is very stupid. The relevant part of the testimony concerns a different section of the same 2011 Daily Mail article concerning Ghislaine Maxwell's helicopter. First, here's the excerpt from the Daily Mail. When you hear this, I want you to try and visualize who the helicopter passengers are. I'd have been about 17 at the time, Virginia says. I flew to the Caribbean with Jeffrey, and then Ghislaine Maxwell went to pick up Bill on a huge black helicopter that Jeffrey had bought her. She'd always wanted to fly, and Jeffrey paid for her to take lessons, and I remember she was very excited because she got her license around the first year we met. I used to get frightened flying with her, but Bill had the Secret Service with him, and I remember him talking about what a good job she did. Now, hearing that, did you picture Ghislaine, Virginia, and Bill Clinton on the helicopter together? Me neither, because Virginia clearly says she was already on the island when Ghislaine left to pick up Clinton on the chopper. But apparently some people did get that impression, which is weird to me, but it also doesn't matter at all. Now, here is a part of a deposition given by Virginia in 2015 that was unsealed in January 2024, the beginning of 2024, just like Clinton said. Now, it's from a part where she's being really intensely grilled about the helicopter thing by Ghislaine's sleazy lawyer, Laura Menninger. Do you recall seeing a press article written by Sharon Churcher reporting that you flew on a helicopter with Bill Clinton and Ghislaine Maxwell as the pilot? No, I do not recall reading a press article saying that I was on a helicopter with Bill Clinton as Ghislaine as the pilot. Do you recall telling Sharon Churcher that you had conversations with Bill Clinton regarding him flying on a helicopter with Ghislaine Maxwell? I believe it was taken out of context. Ghislaine told me that she flew Bill Clinton in, and Ghislaine likes to talk a lot of stuff that sounds fantastical, and whether it's true or not, that is what I do recall telling Sharon Churcher. So you told Sharon Churcher that Ghislaine Maxwell is the one who told you that she flew Bill Clinton in the helicopter. I told Sharon Churcher that Ghislaine flew Bill Clinton onto the island, based upon what Ghislaine told me. Not based upon what Bill Clinton had told you, correct? So, wait, this can't possibly be what Clinton is referring to, right? Well, pay attention to this part here. I told Sharon Churcher that Ghislaine flew Bill Clinton onto the island based upon what Ghislaine told me. Imagine hearing that one line out of context and how it might seem to exonerate Clinton. That is what Clinton's talking about. Now, I know I had to get a little bit into the weeds here, but I want to make this extremely clear. Despite what Clinton wrote in his little book, Virginia did not recant her claim to have seen him on Little St. James. She clarified to Maxwell's lawyer that she actually hadn't seen Clinton fly to the island, but she's always maintained that she saw him there. So, that means that when Clinton wrote in his new memoir,
however, in early 2024, unsealed deposition showed that she'd only heard I was there, but didn't actually see me.
That is an intentional lie. Slick Willie, at it again. This is my Encyclopedia Brown moment. Let's flip to the back of the book for the solution. And look at that, we've caught him dead to rights in a self-serving lie, which then, of course, casts doubt over everything we've ever heard about the island from Bill Clinton, if that's even his real name. Looks like Young Encyclopedia is correct, another case. And, oh, what's that? Oh, apparently he's saying this one was much darker than usual. Sorry about that, kid. On second thought, it was a mistake to involve you in this. I don't know if Clinton is truly guilty of the horrible crimes so many people have speculated about, and I don't feel comfortable publicly accusing him of child sex abuse without something more substantial, which, admittedly, we will probably never have. But if I had to guess, I'd say, yeah, Clinton 100% knew about what was going on. Even if he never participated himself, he had plenty of opportunities to help prosecutors. He could have shared information. He could have kept children from getting harmed. Instead, he did what Clintons always do. He lied or he stayed quiet to grow his own wealth and power. And whether or not Bill did anything inappropriate or even knew about it happening, it's simply a fact that by spending time around Epstein, by giving Epstein the opportunity to put up photos of the two of them together in his homes, in the places where he brought his victims, Clinton helped to facilitate child abuse on a grand scale, and he has never come close to acknowledging that. It's extremely unlikely that Bill Clinton or any of the other wealthy, powerful elites involved with Epstein will ever face anything approaching justice for any of this. But hey, if you're watching this and you're a legit journalist and you get the chance to interview Bill Clinton about his book in the near future, may I suggest this question? Mr. Clinton, in your new book, you claim that Virginia Giuffre admitted that she lied about seeing you on Epstein's island. Since I'm sure you know that isn't true, you're committing libel against an incredibly brave and inspirational person who's been through more trauma and bullshit than you could ever imagine, you piece of shit, rat bastard fuck. Fuck you for doing that. I guess that's not really a question.
Final thoughts, Bill Clinton, you are a bitch. But you're my little St. James.
No, that's weird. I don't like that nickname. Did you think of that in the middle and you wanted to use it at the end? Yeah. Oh,
no. I just thought of it like a metaphor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Makes me feel pretty uncomfortable.